Baudelaire was possibly the greatest of all the French poets. He was followed by Rimbaud and all the poets who followed Rimbaud, but his work doesn't have the incredible difficulty that Mallarmé and his followers had. He always followed a strict Alexandrine, and therefore it is sometimes very important not just to actually read Baudelaire in French with a bilingual translation, but to actually hear him read by professional French actors. There is a marvellous box set of CDs published by Edition Tebb, which is 15 CDs for about £30. Baudelaire, L'intégrale de l'œuvre poétique, and this is a wonderful way of hearing how Baudelaire would actually sound, would have sounded himself. The best translation is one done in the early 1960s by Francis Scarfe, Baudelaire selected verse in the Penguin Poets, which can be bought for a penny plus postage on the internet. There is a reprint of this done by Anvil recently, but it is still the same text and is many times as expensive. The best actual biography of Baudelaire is by Claude Pichois, Baudelaire, which is a very large book, and this too can be bought for a penny plus postage on Amazon in translation. Baudelaire's life was extremely strange. He was never successful at anything except poetry. He was never really understood by anyone. He was considered dissolute, and I remember when I first came across a book about one of his poems doing A-level French, my very old French teacher said he was a disgraceful person, and therefore whether this affected me or not I don't know, but it was not until the last few years that I've become really interested in modern French poetry. And what actually got me into Baudelaire was not the Tellem box recordings, but some marvellous videos on YouTube done in the name of Cattilov, C-A-T-T-I-L-O-V. If you type into the search bar on YouTube Baudelaire Cattilov, you'll find 1259 videos with excellent graphics and sometimes very good musical backgrounds. One I was looking at yesterday has Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings as a background, and these are absolutely superb, and these are a very good introduction. Unfortunately they do not have a bilingual text, which some other versions have. One of Baudelaire's most famous poems is The Jewels, les Bijoux. La très chère était nue, et connaissant mon cœur, elle n'avait gardé que ses bijoux sonores, dont le riche attirail lui donnait l'air vainqueur, quand dans leur jeu heureux les esclaves des morts. Quand ils jettent en dansant son bruit vif et moqueur, ce monde rayonnant de métal et de pierre me ravit en extase, et j'aime à la fureur les choses où le son se mêle à la lumière. Elle était donc couchée et s'est laissée aimer, et du haut du divan elle souriait d'aise à mon amour profond et doux comme la mer, qui vers elle montait comme vers sa falaise. Les yeux fixés sur moi, comme un tigre denté, d'un air vague et rêveur, elle essayait des poses, et la candeur unie à la lubricité donnait un charme neuf à ses métamorphoses. Et son bras et sa jambe et sa cuisse et ses rênes, polis comme d'huile, onduleux comme un cygne, passaient devant mes yeux clairvoyants et sereins, et son ventre et ses seins, ses grappes de ma vigue, s'avançaient plus câlins que les anges du mal, pour troubler le repos où mon âme était mise, et pour la déranger du rocher de cristal, où calme et solitaire elle s'était assise. Je croyais voir unis par un nouveau dessein les anges de l'Antiope au buste d'une imberbe, tant sa taille faisait ressortir son bassin. Sur ce teint fauve et brun, le phare était superbe, et la lampe s'étant résignée à mourir, comme le foyer seul illuminait la chambre, chaque fois qu'il poussait un flamboyant soupir, il inondait de sang cette peau couleur d'ombre. And translation in prose is very good. The jewels. My darling was naked, and knowing my heart, was clad only in her sonorous jewellery, whose rich splendour gave her the triumphant air that Moorish slave women have in their days of happiness. When, as it dances, it throws out its harp, mocking noise, that glittering world of metal and stone thrills me to ecstasy, and I madly love those things in which sound and light commingle. So she reclined, and let herself be loved, and high on the divan she smiled for joy upon my love, as deep and gentle as the sea, which rose towards her as to a cliff, with her eyes intent on me. Like a tame tigress, with a vague, dreamy look, she tried this pose and that, and candidness and wantonness together gave a novel charm to her variations. Her arms and legs, her thighs and loins, glistening like oil, rippling swan-like, passed before my clairvoyant and serene eyes, and her belly and her breasts, those clusters of my vine, thrust themselves forward, more alluring than the angels of evil, to trouble the rest of my soul had found, and cast it down from the crystal rock whereon it had settled, calm and solitary. I thought I saw before me, united in a new pattern, Antiope's hips and a stripling's bust, so strongly did her narrow waist accentuate her pelvis. The rouge was superb on that wild tawny complexion, and as the lamp had resigned itself to die, and the hearth alone lit up the room, each time it gave a fiery sigh, it flowed like blood over that amber skin. What has puzzled critics most, strangely, is not necessarily the quality and the excellent quality of Baudelaire's writing, but Baudelaire's religious faith or lack of it. There is one well-known book on Baudelaire which calls him a redemptive Satanist. Other authors describe him as a Christian without faith. I think the point is really that Baudelaire believed absolutely in the transcendence of art above life. In his introduction to Baudelaire in French Poetry 1820-1950 by William Rees, says this, that sordid reality with its ennui, its banal and purposeless tedium is transcended by art. Out of evil and suffering and even failure come artistic profits, les fleurs du mal. Created by the poet-alchemist whose receptive and creative spirit is in excited contact with a mysterious harmony of symbols beyond reality, an enigmatic mental dimension linked with our perception by synesthetic correspondences between our different senses. Experience is transferred intuitively between different planes of our awareness and across different art forms as we take with Baudelaire the first tentative steps into that temple of nature, that forest of symbols in which Rimbaud, a more dispassionate explorer, will later lose himself. Baudelaire's poetry, like his life, is full of strangeness, but it is an absolutely wonderful strangeness. It is, in a sense, very, very concrete poetry, totally involved in sensuality. But Baudelaire was himself an extremely moral and upright man. His lifetime muse, Jeanne Duval, was a prostitute who was continuously unfaithful to him, yet Baudelaire took upon himself her care for the rest of his life. And the Jean Duval cycle of poems, of which that was the most famous and the most notorious, gives an example of the way he wrote. There are other poems with completely different ideas, but that, I think, is a very good beginning to reading Baudelaire, that particular poem.